Waiting for you, my tiger. My husband already left. She didn't mean to send it to me, but she did. And suddenly, everything cracked. It was 9:13 a.m. My coffee was still warm, steam curling upward like a thought I hadn't had yet. The office buzzed its usual song. Printers clicking, keyboards tapping, someone's laugh in the break room. Ordinary. And then it wasn't. One line. No subject. No context. Just a message from her. Waiting for you, my tiger. My husband already left. It hit like a pin in a balloon. Not loud but final. I froze. The cursor blinked on the screen. A pulse. Her name right above it. Not a number, not a typo. Her. I didn't breathe. Not fully. Just a half-drawn breath, caught like a thread on a nail. My fingers floated above the mouse, suddenly unsure how to move. Everything in my body, my chest, my hands, even my spine, felt like it belonged to someone else. I didn't respond, didn't rage, didn't ask, because part of me already knew. I stood, left my jacket behind. My tie was still tight, too tight, like it knew before I did. Phone in my pocket. But I didn't call her. Couldn't. The hallway stretched long, like a tunnel with no end. Every footstep sounded wrong. My reflection in the elevator door looked unfamiliar. Too still. Outside, the sky was blinding. The kind of clear blue that made you feel like a fool for hurting. I drove. Red lights meant nothing. Street signs blurred past like names I couldn't remember. I don't remember driving. Just appearing. On our street. My fingers white against the wheel. My mouth dry. And there it was. Our window. The one we picked out together because she liked how it caught the sunset. And behind it, the silhouette of a man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't hiding. He was just there. Like he belonged. Like he wasn't waiting for me to come home to my house. I didn't get out. I sat there. Engine idling. Heart racing against the silence. And I stared. Not at him. Not even at her. But at the shape, that shape like a crack in glass. It didn't shatter. Not yet. But I could feel it. The fracture lines spreading. Slow and invisible. Beneath everything I had believed. My key was in my hand. Heavy. Familiar. Warm from my palm. But it felt wrong. Like unlocking the door would let the lie inside me finish its sentence. I could go in. I could open the door and demand answers. I could destroy the illusion before it destroyed me. But I didn't. Not yet. Because some betrayals don't scream. They whisper. And I was still listening. Her story didn't change. But her eyes did. And I started noticing everything I had once ignored. I didn't ask her that night. Not about the message. Not about the man in the window. I walked in like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't parked a block away for 15 minutes, just tracing circles on the steering wheel, begging my hand to open the door. She was in the kitchen, chopping red peppers the way she always did, too thin, too fast. The knife rhythm like a metronome trying to ignore the tempo of my heart. She laughed at something on her phone, too loud, like it was meant for someone else to hear. The pink sweatshirt, the one from college, was draped on her like memory. It used to smell like lavender and sleep. Now it smelled like distance, like a version of her that no longer came home. Long day? She asked. Her eyes never left the screen. Yeah, I said. The word sat flat in my mouth. Dry as the toast she left on the counter that morning. Untouched but still warm when I found it. That night we sat on the couch. She curled into me like she always had. Head against my shoulder, fingers tangled in the hem of my shirt. But her weight felt hollow, her warmth too practiced, like someone imitating closeness from memory. I didn't move, not because I trusted her, but because I needed to pretend, needed to believe there was still a thread holding us together, even if it was fraying in my hands. Her phone lit up once, a soft blue glow against her cheek. She didn't flinch. She didn't even glance, like she was used to the timing, like she had already memorized his messages without needing to read them. I counted the seconds it stayed on before fading. 7. 7 seconds of silence I'll never forget. The next morning I checked our phone records, not to confirm anything. I already felt it. I checked because I needed to know how invisible I'd become. 12 calls. Same number. All after midnight. She always said she went to bed early. Maybe it was a client. Maybe a friend. Maybe someone needed help. But maybe was just a slower way of saying no. That night, I watched her sleep. Face turned away from me. Arms folded in. The space between us on the bed wide enough for someone else to fit. Her breathing was steady. I used to find comfort in that sound. Now, it felt like eavesdropping on a secret I wasn't meant to hear. The truth was close. Close enough to feel, but not close enough to hold. It hung in the air between us, like perfume after someone's left the room. And I realized something. Maybe I didn't want the truth. Maybe I just wanted her to choose me again. Even if I had to pretend she already had. I stopped asking what if, and started watching instead. She said she was going to the gym. Said it the way she used to say I love you, automatic, easy, like it didn't need to be true to be said. She pulled on her leggings, the navy ones with the subtle mesh pattern down the sides. The same ones she hadn't touched since last spring when we still went on morning runs together and shared playlists like secrets. She tied her hair into a high ponytail. Quick, tight. The kind that said she didn't care except she did. I could tell by the way she checked her reflection twice. Adjusted one loose strand. Spritz perfume. Perfume. For the gym? She grabbed her water bottle. The one with the faded sticker from our anniversary trip. It was still full. I could hear the weight of it as she placed it in her bag. Her towel folded. Dry. Clean edges like it had just come from the drawer. She kissed me on the cheek. A soft press of lips too gentle to leave warmth. The smile that followed was almost perfect. Almost. But her breath lingered for a half second too long, like a line rehearsed and delivered with just a bit too much pause. And then she left. I didn't follow right away. I just sat there. Still. Listening to the silence she left behind, wondering when it had become so loud. 10 minutes passed. Maybe more. I don't remember deciding. One moment I was staring at the door. The next I was behind the wheel. Hands on the steering wheel like they'd done this before without me. I drove without thinking. Parked 3 blocks from the gym. Turned off the engine. Adjusted the rear view. People came and went. Young professionals with earbuds. Tired parents in sweats. The kind of regulars you recognize without knowing their names. But not her. Not even close. I waited. 40 minutes. Long enough for the doubt to curdle into something heavier. Not anger. Not even hurt. Just awareness. I turned the key in slow motion like speed might make it worse. I drove home without music. The kind of silence that wraps around your thoughts like wet cloth. I made sure to arrive after her. The house looked normal. Too normal. Her shoes were by the door, angled just so, like she'd taken them off for someone else to notice. I heard the shower running upstairs. Steam curling out from under the door like breath held too long. I walked past it. Stopped at the gym bag by the stairs. Zipped shut. Not slouched open. Not wrinkled or half unpacked like usual. Zipped. I knelt beside it. Fingers hovered over the pull tab. Paused. I didn't unzip it. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I already did. And if I opened that bag and found everything untouched. No damp towel. No sweat-soaked shirt. No trace of a workout. Then it wouldn't be suspicion anymore. It would be confirmation. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. That night, we lay in bed. Our backs barely touching. Just enough to remind each other we were still there, but not enough to mean it. She shifted in her sleep once. I didn't. My eyes stayed on the ceiling, counting the tiny specks in the paint like stars in a sky that had stopped promising anything. And somewhere between breaths, it hit me. I didn't just feel lonely. I felt optional. Like something she used to need but didn't anymore. I didn't confront her. I changed myself, slowly, like a man dimming the lights in his own home. I started waking up before her. Not dramatically earlier, just enough to avoid her morning stretch, her yawn, the silence between us that used to be filled with forehead kisses and dumb inside jokes. I'd make the coffee in silence. The old ceramic mug with the crack near the rim. Hers. Still her favorite. I stopped pouring for 2. Not out of anger. But because I didn't want to look at the full cup sitting there, cooling beside mine like a question no one wanted to ask. I watched the routines. Like a scientist cataloging weather patterns. When she reached for her phone before she reached for me. The way her eyes lit up, not when I walked in, but when a message did. The way she started wearing lipstick on Tuesdays, coral red, the one she always said felt too bold even though we didn't go out on Tuesdays. Never had. But she never wore it for our dinners anymore. I changed my passwords. Email. streaming services, even my lock screen. Not because I had secrets, but because I needed to remember that some things were still mine. She didn't ask why, didn't notice, or didn't care. And somehow that was worse than suspicion. One night, I told her I had a work dinner. I wore a blazer, put on cologne, pretended. She nodded without asking which client. Didn't ask what restaurant. Didn't offer to join. I walked out like a man stepping off a cliff and pretending the fall was part of the plan. There was no dinner. Just me. 2 blocks away. Parked under a dead street lamp with the engine off and the windows cracked. I watched the house. Our house. The one with the scuffed porch where we carved our initials into the wood post the week after we moved in. The lights flicked on. Then off. Then on again, upstairs. I sat so still I forgot to blink. Her silhouette passed the window. Then another. Just for a second. It could have been nothing. But my hands clenched around the steering wheel so tightly that when I let go, the leather left marks on my palms. 5 lines. Deep. Like reminders. The next morning I bought a small black notebook. Unlabeled. Plain. The kind a detective might carry or a priest confessing to himself in silence. I didn't write accusations. Just fragments. 7:04 p.m. Lipstick in the trash, fresh coat on. Tuesday left without gym bag, returned with different earrings. I'm tired, said with smile still on her lips. Each page filled itself. Not with rage, not with vengeance. With truth. Tiny, unremarkable truths that, when lined up, spelled something enormous. I wasn't tracking her. I was trying to stop gaslighting myself. Because I'd started to doubt not just her story, but my own memory. The warmth we used to share. The stories we used to tell. Her voice calling me babe like it meant something. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for exit velocity. For the moment when gravity stopped holding me to this life. The truth didn't break me. Her pretending it wasn't happening did. It was a Thursday. She said she had a late meeting. Smiled like she always did. Tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Her voice casual, too casual, like someone delivering a line she'd practiced in the mirror. I smiled back. But I'd already checked her calendar at lunch. No meeting. No events. Just white space where her excuse should have lived. She wore the gold earrings. The ones I gave her on our 3rd anniversary back when she still opened gifts with both hands like they meant something. I hadn't seen them in months. Maybe a year. She used to say they were too nice for every day. Apparently, today qualified. I didn't say a word. Just nodded, kissed her forehead, and watched the back of her coat disappear into the night. The door clicked shut like a closing parenthesis. I stood in the silence. Then I opened the notebook. 6:41 p.m. Wrote it down. Noted the perfume, new. Soft and floral, but sharp at the edges. It didn't smell like her. It smelled like someone she was trying to become. I waited an hour. Not because I wanted space, but because I didn't want to be right. Then I drove. Not toward her office. Toward the old parking structure across from the bookstore, the one where we used to meet after work when life felt like a shared thing instead of a divided one. And there she was. Her car. Neatly parked. Next to a silver sedan. Clean, unfamiliar. I stayed across the street. Windows cracked. Hands in my lap like I didn't trust them anymore. The air was too still. The kind of stillness you only notice when something inside you is screaming. 10 minutes passed. Then she emerged. From the cafe across the lot. Alone. She walked like she was on her way to nothing important. But then him. He followed a beat behind. I don't know if it was the same man from the window. Baseball cap? Sunglasses. The kind of casual disguise you wear when you think you're clever, but not guilty. He caught up to her. Said something. She laughed. Not the polite kind. Not the surface kind she gives to coworkers. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. She touched his arm. Not a dramatic gesture. Just familiar. Casual. Hers. And that was it. That was the tear. Not a scream. Not a scene. Just the sound of fabric pulling at the seam. Quiet. Permanent. It wasn't the betrayal. It was the indifference. The way she didn't bother hiding it. Didn't look around. Didn't flinch. Like I was a memory. Something already boxed up and shelved. I watched them walk back toward the cars. Not close. But close enough to be something. Then I drove home. Lights off. Music off. The only sound was the turn signal ticking through a red light I barely noticed. She walked through the door 40 minutes later. Kissed my cheek. Set her keys down with a sigh that sounded almost proud of itself. I'm starving, she said. I skipped lunch. I turned to her. How was the meeting? She didn't miss a beat. Long, she said. So boring. And smiled. Just a little too wide. That was it. The first real lie. Not hidden in schedules or silences, but spoken straight into my face. And I let her say it. Because the moment was too delicate to break. Because I wasn't ready to lose everything. Not yet. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt most. It was becoming someone I didn't recognize anymore. I stopped replying to messages. Family group chats. Work reminders. Friends checking in with half-hearted "have you been" texts. They all sat there unread like unopened mail in a house no one lived in anymore. I stopped shaving. Let my face grow wild, uneven. The stubble itched but felt honest, like something real growing through everything fake. I drank coffee that tasted like metal. Let milk expire in the fridge, unopened. I couldn't remember if it was 3 or 5 days past the date when it turned. Didn't care enough to check. At work, I floated. Meetings blurred past my ears. I nodded when people paused, said "good point" even when I didn't know who was speaking. Laughed too quickly. Too loudly. Just to convince the room I was still part of it. At home, I said less. Dinner tasted like plastic. Her voice like a podcast I didn't choose to play. I'd sit at the edge of the couch while she scrolled through her phone, the light casting shadows on her face that made her look younger. Or older. I couldn't tell. At night, I'd lie awake beside her. Not close. Just near enough to feel the heat and none of the warmth. I counted her breaths. Not because I was scared she'd stop, but because I wondered if they sped up when she thought of him. She still touched my arm sometimes. Still called me babe. But it didn't feel like intimacy. It felt like habit. Like turning off a light you forgot you left on. The word sounded hollow now. Like it had been used too many times, handed to someone else, and passed back. The notebook got heavier. Not with evidence, but with questions. Who was he? How long had it been going on? Was this the first time, or just the first time I noticed? And worst of all, had I ever really known her? Or had I fallen in love with a version she only wore for a little while? One night, I opened her laptop. I had never done that before. Not because I believed in privacy, but because I believed in her. That was my mistake. There was a second email account, hidden in plain sight. The password was her mother's maiden name. Of course it was. Easy. Familiar. I had helped her reset that password once, years ago. It felt like unlocking a door I didn't realize was in her home. And inside it, everything. Threads of messages stretching back months. Nicknames. Shared jokes. Schedules. Complaints. Worries. Plans. She didn't just meet him. She leaned on him. And the way she described me. Cold. Withdrawn. Predictable. Sweet but so passive. Hard to talk to. Feels like we're roommates. She wrote that the last time I brought her flowers I handed them to her like I was clocking out of an obligation. I don't remember it that way. But maybe that's the point. Maybe I wasn't who I thought I was anymore. Maybe she wasn't either. Maybe our marriage wasn't dying. Maybe it already had and I was just the ghost that hadn't realized the house had emptied. And she had already moved on. Not when I found the emails. Not even when she kissed my cheek and called me babe. But long before I knew what I was losing. And maybe that's the worst kind of betrayal. Not being left, but being forgotten. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I packed. The next morning I stood in front of the mirror with a razor in my hand. Not for drama. Not for some symbolic transformation. Just for clarity. The sound of the blade scraping against my skin was the loudest thing I'd heard in weeks. It echoed in my head like a declaration, quiet, certain, final. When I rinsed my face, I looked up. My eyes were tired. But beneath the ache, there was something else. Choice. The kind you only see once everything else is gone. She was still asleep. The house was cloaked in that fragile, pre-dawn silence, the kind that hums like it's holding its breath. The kind of quiet that lies, pretending everything is still whole if you don't move too fast. I moved slowly. I opened the closet and began to choose. Not just clothes, choices. The shirts I wore before her. The jacket she never liked, but I always did. The running shoes I hadn't touched in months. The watch my father gave me the year I graduated. Still ticking. Still mine. I left the wedding photo face down on the dresser. That was enough. No words. No gesture. Just silence turned sideways. I didn't pack everything. Just what I could carry without regret. A suitcase. A backpack. A part of me I thought I'd lost. I didn't check her phone. Didn't open the notebook one last time. Didn't stand in the doorway for a final look. Because I already knew. Some betrayals don't scream. They don't punch walls or leave bruises. They just change the air. Make it heavier. Make it still. Make it impossible to breathe the way you used to. By the time the sunlight hit the blinds, I was gone. I didn't text her. Didn't call. Didn't leave a note she could cry over or resent or tear in half. I gave her exactly what she'd already taken from me. Silence. I walked out of the life we built like stepping out of smoke. No anger. No drama. Just a man remembering how to breathe. And once you remember that, you never go back into the fire. I thought I'd walked away for good. Until her message, the one she didn't mean for me to see, came again. 2 weeks passed. The world didn't end. It just paused. I was living in a short-term rental with bare walls and bad lighting. A ticking clock echoed through the place like a heartbeat I didn't want to claim. It smelled like old paint and someone else's regrets. It felt like a waiting room. For the rest of my life. I didn't bring much. Just a suitcase, a few books, the notebook I hadn't opened since I left. Some nights I stared at the ceiling, waiting to feel free. Some mornings I'd sit by the window, coffee in hand, watching people walk dogs they loved. I was relearning loneliness. But at least now it was mine. Then one morning. A new message. Different number. Same words. Waiting for you, my tiger. My husband already left. My breath caught. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. I wasn't the recipient this time. It had been forwarded. Accidentally. To someone who was never supposed to see it. His wife. She found my number. I don't know how. But when my phone rang and I heard her voice, quiet and shaking, I knew. Are you the other husband? That silence. That pause. It told us everything we needed to know. We met at a small cafe. Neutral ground. 2 ghosts with coffee. She wore a gray sweater and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She was calm in that way people get when they've cried too much and nothing's left to say. She handed me her phone. Didn't speak as she scrolled. Messages. Photos. Dates that overlapped with mine. Lies that echoed in different voices. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was cheating on her. With mine. We sat in silence. 2 people who should have never met, joined by the same wound. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't need more proof. I didn't need to ask why. The why had stopped matching. They lied. Together. Creatively. Effortlessly. Over and over. But the lie didn't define us. She looked at me then. Not with pity. Not with sympathy. Just recognition. And I realized something. The real question wasn't what they had. It was what we had left. The weight we were no longer carrying for them. The grief we no longer owed to people who had already walked away in secret. Maybe this wasn't closure. Maybe it wasn't healing. Maybe it was just truth. Quiet. Mutual. Undeniable. And maybe that was enough. 2 people finally free from the stories written without their consent. We didn't hug. Didn't promise to stay in touch. We just sipped our coffee and let the silence do what it does best. Tell the truth no one wanted to say out loud. She texted me 3 days later. Not to say sorry, but to ask where I'd left the spare charger. I didn't answer. I read it once, then let it disappear behind the lock screen like a leaf drifting down a storm drain. That was the first message. I had imagined 1,000 versions of her apology. The trembling voice. The long silence on the phone before she finally broke. The tears. The excuses. Maybe even the anger, that desperate attempt to rewrite history with blame. But what came was mundane. Hey, do you know where the extra phone charger is? Like I just stepped out for groceries. Like none of it had any weight. The days blurred. Her messages came slowly at first, then in clusters. Are you okay? Can we talk? I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm still trying to understand what happened. Each word felt like it was plucked from a template. Not lies. Just empty. The way someone means a song that gets stuck in their head. For a while. Until something else takes its place. I didn't reply. Because she wasn't talking to me. Not really. She was talking to the idea of me. The version that would forgive easily. That would sit on the edge of the bed waiting to say, I just want to understand. But I wasn't him anymore. The man who needed answers had packed his things and disappeared before sunrise. And I think she noticed too late. The other wife and I kept talking. Not often. Not deeply. Just truthfully. It wasn't romantic. We didn't need it to be. It felt like standing in front of a shattered window with someone else who saw the same broken view. We didn't try to explain it away. We just nodded. She told me how long it had gone on. The hotels. The fake conferences. The gym memberships they both suddenly found time for. She told me there were times she looked at her husband and saw someone else's fingerprints on his skin. Then she paused, took a breath, and said, one night he said your name in his sleep. I didn't speak for a while, because there it was. The line. The exact moment when my story was no longer mine. Not because of love, not even because of lust, but because of carelessness. Because they stopped pretending to protect the illusion. Because they let it spill into the quiet places. Into dreams. Into routines. Into names that weren't theirs to hold. She didn't just betray me. She erased me. She forgot I was real. That I had memory. That I noticed things. That I loved her once fully. Naively. Completely. And now? Now she wanted to know where I left the charger. I no longer needed closure. I became it. I went back to the house once. Not to speak. Not to confront. Just to feel the silence, but on my terms this time. The door opened like it always had. Same weight, same creak. But it didn't feel like entering a home. It felt like walking through a photograph. Still. Frozen. Already over. Her shoes were by the door. The brown flats with the scuffed heels. She always meant to replace them. A candle burned in the kitchen. Lavender. The same scent from that first night, the message, the window, the silence that started it all. It wrapped around me, soft and artificial. Like the memory of comfort, but not the real thing. I didn't go upstairs. Didn't need to. I didn't want to see her bed. Didn't want to count the pillows. Didn't want to check if his toothbrush was in the holder now. I just walked to the counter. Set my key down. It didn't make a sound when it landed. Just existed. Finally without meaning. Beside it I placed the notebook. Pages torn out. Every single one. Not out of rage. Not to destroy the evidence. But because I no longer needed to hold it. I didn't want to carry her secrets anymore. Didn't want to remember myself through the lens of her betrayal. She could keep the silence. I didn't need it back. That night I walked the street near our old cafe. Same cracked sidewalk. Same leaning lamppost. The cafe had changed names. New chalkboard sign. Different flowers in the window box. I wasn't looking for her. I was just remembering me. Who I was before all of this. Before the lies. Before the quiet unraveling. I stopped in front of the bookstore where we once shared headphones on a rainy afternoon. Back when closeness was effortless. Back when I thought love was proof of something. And I breathed. There was a stillness inside me I hadn't felt in months. Maybe years. Not peace exactly. Not forgiveness. Just distance. A clean cut where the wound used to be. I didn't need answers. I didn't need apology. And for the first time I didn't need to be loved to feel real. I just needed to be mine again. And finally I was.